stuck here. The cops won't bother me.
That was nice of her. So it's pretty empty. It used to be pretty packed here, but there were a lot of dying businesses here before the epidemic anyway. But now it's just, I think a lot of people here are turning to crime as well, much like what's happening everywhere. This has always been a very depressed sort of area. This big building here used to be some office complexes, and now they turned it into luxury condos. Which is kind of interesting. I smell weed. This is kind of, that should be the motto of Oxon Hill. I smell weed. Because you start to smell weed everywhere. Harley Davidson and a Jeep. What? Alright, man, move. I don't want you to be in my blind spot. Dodge. Yesterday I had a guy interested in buying the Kimco 500, and I don't know, like, so the day before he messages me like at 2 in the morning, and I was wondering who the hell messages somebody to buy something at 2 in the morning. So anyway, I messaged him back, and he's like, hey, and he lowballed me. So he said, I'll give you $1,500. And I'm like, alright, come and get it. And then he's really serious, or it seems like he's serious that he wants to get the bike. So I was like, oh, this guy wants to get this thing at 2 in the morning. So I gave him like the local high school address, and I guess he figured it out, and then he kind of forgot about it, or I just fell asleep. Then the next day, I mean, he literally like was asking me tons of questions, you know, how long have I had it, is the title clear, what does it need, all of these questions that show that you're a serious buyer. But I kind of suspected that he wasn't serious, because it's just something a little, if somebody lowballs you right from the beginning, then you're off to not a good start. And eventually, the next day, he lowballs me again. So initially he offers $1,500, and then he goes back and he goes like, oh, I only have $1,200. Can you also deliver it? So not only he lowballs me, but he wants me to deliver it to Baltimore. And I told him, hey, I'll deliver it for $1,600 or something like that. And he's like, no, I don't have that much. I only have $1,500, but I'll give you $1,200. And eventually he's like, you know what, I'm not interested. After like answering all those questions, and I realized that he was a deadbeat from the beginning. But I thought, let's see what this guy has to say. Sometimes like you get some very interesting conversations with people. And I've gotten bikes from guys that have tried to buy other bikes from me. So I try not to get upset and stuff like that if people lowballing me. I did have one guy that completely went off the rails, and I think I was selling a Honda Accord. It was a 1999. It was like $700 I was asking for. I needed a lot of work, and the guy messaged me and he's like, is it available? You know, the typical thing that people do when they're not interested. So I replied, if the ad is up, then it's available. And then he went off the rails. He was like, what kind of customer service is this? You have to work on your customer service. And then he started with homophobic slurs, and then he started calling me the N-word. And eventually he was like texting me every like minute, threatening me. And he thought he was really intelligent, but I kind of looked him up afterwards, and he cuts grass for a living, which I don't really care too much about cutting grass, but he was saying that he's a detention officer. So I think he was trying to scare me for some reason. You know, I guess these detention officers are bad boys. but he cut grass for a living. What the hell is his name? And I think he lived with his mom in his basement, which, by the way, I don't really care. We're in tough times, but the guy went completely off the rails when it came to me telling him that if the ad is up, then it's clearly available. Which, by the way, I don't understand why Facebook makes it so easy for people to ask if it's available. All you get is a bunch of people asking if it's available, and they never reply back. I bought an NC700 from a guy, and it turned out it became kind of nutty afterwards. And I think because I fixed it. So I bought it cheap, $2,000, and I sold it pretty cheap. I sold it for $3,000. So I should have gotten a little bit more money from it. But I bought it for $2,000, and I bought it with the engine light on. So he sold it to me knowing that, and he actually was a little deceptive because he took it to a bike shop to get the engine clear, the engine code out, but it came back. And the previous week I was supposed to meet him to buy it or to look at it, and by the time I got to his house, he's like, oh, an emergency came up. What are you doing, stupid? It's so stupid. This guy just... God. Stupid taxi. So I was supposed to meet him in his house, and then he canceled, said it was an emergency, but now I realized that he was just... the engine light was on, and he wanted to try and clear it. So the next week, he's like, hey, I got the bike at Coleman Power Sports, whatever, and I'll let it go for $2,000. So I was like, alright, fine, I'll go over there. And I picked it up, you know, he seemed like a nice guy, as most people do in person. And then I took it back, and it had the engine light on. I had some issues, but it turns out the reason that the engine light was on was the positive terminal on the battery was loose. That's it. Not even a dead battery. So I tightened it, and maybe this is where I screwed up. I told him, like, because we were like being very friendly online, we were going to ride together. I told him, hey, I figured out what the problem was. It was just a bolt that was loose. And then he wanted more money. He made this thing up, like, say that if I figured it out and it was cheap, then I have to pay him. So, I mean, I don't know what kind of deal that is. I mean, so does that mean if I bought it with the engine light off and it needed an engine, that he would give me money? Of course not. But he made this thing up, and all our interaction was online, so I asked him, hey, show me where I said that. And of course, then he's like, oh, I'm kidding, but he wasn't. And then he freaked out again, because he wanted to go to Baltimore and pick up some dumbbells.